Welcome to episode 66 of the Golf Podcast. So, Mike, I got a chance to finally get out there, and I know you did too last week. How did it go?
It actually surprisingly it went very well. My expectations were low, but believe it or not, I went out there. I fired. It was 7 pars and 1 birdie in my first round in 6 months.
Wow.
So the other 10 holes were pretty much a disaster. So I didn't score overall that well, but on those 7 or 8 holes, I was very pleased with how I played. I think a couple episodes ago, or maybe it was last episode, you asked me one bit of advice I'd give to someone playing the game. And I said, well, just take it slow. Just slow everything down and go at a very slow pace. And that's what I did. Wedge game was perfect. My putts, perfect. Had some trouble off the tee here and there, but other than that, it seems promising. I'm actually going back out there tomorrow morning. I got a 9 a.m. or so. Hopefully it carries out.
That's excellent news.
How about you?
Well, I was just about to say, like, I had the exact opposite experience on my first round out. And just before we jump into that, I want to let everybody know today we're going to be talking about how exactly to choose the best fit of which clubs to have in your bag, which is actually a more important topic than some people think. And you take it for granted. So I want to definitely dive into that in a second. But Mike, I was out there. I had a terrible, terrible round. I know it was the first time being out in 6 months, but more so, I was just really hurting. I got a bad back, and we talked a couple episodes ago about the importance of like kind of staying fit and limber and how that can really affect your game, because no matter what we talk about here as far as tips and different ways you can improve, if you're injured and you're not feeling right, you're not going to play well no matter what. I mean, look at Tiger. So
Right.
I ended up, my back was tight and I just could not reach down to get to the ball. It didn't matter how many Advil I popped while I was out there. I couldn't get it loose. But it's just a matter of getting back into things, and I'm getting back into my yoga routine. I saw the chiropractor just to get loosened up. So I'm looking forward to get back out there. I just wanted to give it a couple days off to really heal up, because I was not feeling well. What I ended up doing, I was just trying to do the smart thing though. When I realized after a couple of holes that it was just making it worse, and the last thing I wanted to do was aggravate an injury and then not be able to play, I actually put all the clubs away except for the 7-iron. And started just playing that way. And I tell you, we've talked about this before, about that exercise. Man, if you ever do that, that gives you a ton of insight. I mean, even I go from like trying to struggle to get the driver working, my back is killing me, I'm all over the place, to taking out the 7-iron and being on the green on a par 5 in 3, with two nice 7-irons, 160, then a pitching wedge in. So it's like, sometimes you realize you kill yourself for trying to make certain things work. When you simplify the game down, you learn a lot. That's for sure.
Exactly. So maybe instead of 14 clubs, Frank, you only need, 2 or 3.
In an ideal world, I still say we got to learn to play them all. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So did you learn anything towards the end of the round, or was it just mainly pain? Did you figure things out, or?
You know what? I know exactly what it was. It was a lot. It was just so much tightness in my upper back that I couldn't extend down to the ball, where you have to really extend your arms down. Couldn't do it. And especially with the longer clubs. So just taking the 7-iron, doing a 3/4 swing, and just focusing on ball contact, and I was able to hit the ball well. But if nothing else, like I said, I learned a lot from it physically. So I've started to put a stretching routine together, and I started running again last night. Just trying to, it's like shaking off the cold of 6 months. It's a shame, because I feel like your whole routine kind of goes when you're inside for that long, but just trying to get back into it. And we have an entire exercise piece in the Golf Academy that I'm going to just work my way through again, because it just is so important.
Right.
So Mike, before we jump into the topic, one quick thing I want to say is that we've had an incredible response to the giveaway that we've been doing for the reviews for the 3-Up golf balls. We've sent a bunch of those out. If for any reason you left a review and you didn't get a chance to contact us, make sure you email us at podcast@golficity.com. We got to know who the reviews are and get your address so we can send you your prize. But some really, really great reviews came through. And I'll tell you what, like I said, this is the reason we do it. One that stood out in particular to me, I just want to mention this real quick. One review by Kathy Reagan Young said, I love this podcast. My husband is a golf pro. My kids both play, and I'm a wannabe golfer. Aren't we all?
Yeah.
She said, we all love this podcast. It's very informative, and we've recommended to a lot of other golfer friends. Very well done, gentlemen. Keep up the great work. I mean, seriously, Mike, when you hear that, that is why we do this. We always say we're not pros. We're just learning the game. And when we hear people are getting something out of it and they're getting some sort of success from the things that we're going out there and doing trial and error and learning, it doesn't get any better than that. That's really why we do this, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like you just said, I mean, I love this game more than, I used to be a diehard baseball fan, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the last time I watched a baseball game because my whole life has just been consumed by this game, whether it's talking about it on the show, going out and playing it, talking about it on the site. My life is now golf. So, the fact that I can share what I've learned and can get that feedback, it's fantastic. So thank you.
Yeah, and when you read between the lines there for a review like that, think about it. I mean, it's such a family event. You have, husband, wife playing, the kids are getting into it. And that's another thing I love about it. Baseball, I really loved growing up playing baseball, but golf is a game you play for life. I'm looking forward to down the line playing with my kids. I know, Mike, you are too. So it's just one of those things that, you're always learning. If you can embrace that and have fun with it, that's where the real joy of the game comes in. Sure, you're going to have great rounds, you're going to have bad rounds, but it's that over time progression of just having those highs and lows and enjoying it and getting a little bit better that really is what drives us. All right, so Mike, let's get right into this and let's talk about it. First thing is anybody who's playing the game regularly knows that you can only carry 14 clubs in your bag, and actually the penalty is quite stiff if you were to not. And so if this would be, let's say, if you're playing in some sort of match play or even in just the leagues or whatever it may be, but it's a 2-stroke penalty per hole. For when you're carrying an extra club. So if you got to a point where, you're on the 12th or 13th and you identify that you've been playing it, man, there goes your entire round if you're playing competitively. So yeah. I think the first takeaway is double check your count before you go out there, especially if you're the type of guy who likes to bring a bunch of clubs to the range to practice a few. And then, you get out there and you maybe rush out to the tee and don't think about it. And you're carrying a few extra clubs. That can be a problem. Have you ever had that happen, Mike?
Never happened, but I'm going to use that as an excuse. So if I go out and fire a 36 over, I'm just going to tell people I shot par, but I had 15 clubs in my bag the whole day.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I don't know how much better that would make you look.
Exactly.
Especially with a guy who deals with numbers on a daily basis.
I know, exactly. But no, I've played in a couple of tournaments, a couple local town events, county events, and I've always made sure, as the first thing, make sure I have 14 clubs in my bag. So nope, never happened to me.
Right. Well, let's talk about for a second. This may seem like a trivial topic, but it's really not. I think it's something that a lot of people take for granted, because what will happen is you'll think, okay, I've got my 14 clubs. A lot of times it'll be based on the set that you buy, if you buy a set together or whatever it may be. But is it really optimal what you're carrying? Is it optimal for your game? Is it optimal for your round, for the course you're playing? There's a lot that comes into play here. So, and nowadays with the way that equipment is, it seems like there's so many more options than there ever were available. I mean, with the hybrids and the wedges and everything like that. I mean, you can pretty much get a wedge in any degree you can dream up. And the hybrid clubs are going, way down in the irons, further and further, it seems. So there's a lot of different things you can do, the woods and everything else. So you want to really see if it's ideal. And the way to think about this is the ideal set of club is one that leaves you with the right clubs in your hands for the highest percentage of shots throughout the round. Okay. So as you're playing, think about it, evaluate it. Are there areas in your game where there's a hole where a different club might be able to fill that gap in of a distance that you can't quite hit or a shot you can't quite hit? Or are you finding that very often you're not able to put the right clubs in your hands? That's when you start to really need to evaluate it. So Mike, let's just shoot through this real quick, starting with the easy choices. First of all, you got to have a driver and you got to have your putter. Now, I guess you could argue for somebody like yourself, Mike, who's put the driver
Mhm.
away significantly. You could
Right.
take that. I mean, if you really were to committed to it, you could take that driver out, and that would free up another spot. I mean, have you ever considered that? Because you play that hybrid so well. I mean, I always tout and I always come back to saying keep hitting the driver until you learn it because it is such an important club. But I guess if it got to that point where you say, like, well, I'm not going to learn it on the course because we always say don't practice on the course, practice on the range and then take it out to the course, or dedicate a practice round. But you could say, listen, this is not the place to practice it. I'm going to have two different degree hybrids. Have you ever thought of it?
No, I've never thought of taking it out because I always feel like I'm gonna need it at some point. I mean, that round I played the other day, I used it once, and it was on the 10th hole. We made the turn, and it was a long par four. It was like 440 yards, and it was a dog leg right. So on the range before I went out, I hit the driver about 30 something times. I said, let me try to figure this thing out before I go out today because I really need to learn it this year. Uh, and all my shots were these really nice. I'm a righty, so they were really nice fades. You know, they were starting left, coming back a little bit. Some I was slicing a little bit, but I did have that shot shape of left to right. So I figured, and I was hitting it nice, 270, probably 280. I was really crushing it. I said, this hole's perfect. I went out there. Of course, swing speed got the best of me. I was like hitting a fastball to left field,
Mm-hmm.
and I snap hooked it left, and I ended up making a triple bogey on the hole. So it was my worst hole of the day. It was the only time I used the driver. Again, the confidence went way back down in it.
Yeah.
So but I always feel like I still need it because I feel like one day it's going to come back. I don't know.
Well, you know what? First of all, that's definitely a topic we could spend a whole nother show working on, but it sounds very much like something we've talked about before with you, which is when you are hitting it better, you're speeding it up, and then all of a sudden everything goes out the window. So it's finding that consistent tempo and stopping there. But I agree with you 100%. The driver, I mean, this would only be in some really extenuating circumstances that you wouldn't carry it, but it's something that you're going to need. I mean, the last thing you want to do is run into a hole with a long carry off the tee and you have no club for it, because that goes right against what we said about having the right club in your hands for the most percentage of the time. And you're not gonna, if you're gonna have to swing out of your shoes with a hybrid or a long wood like a 3-wood in order to carry something that you'd be able to carry with your driver. So let's consider those two spots filled, the driver and the putter. The other thing most people would agree that you're going to want to carry is a 3-wood. At the end of the day, if you don't have a 3-wood, let's say you went to a 5-wood or something like that, you are leaving yourself a pretty significant gap there. Again, what the whole purpose of this is to fill in those gaps. There is quite a big difference in the loft of a driver versus a 5-wood. So that 3-wood fills that in well. So I would suggest that. I've always carried it, although I don't hit the 3-wood often. I find that there are a lot of par fives when it comes out of the bag. So I would say definitely leave that in. Now, beyond that, at a minimum, you're going to want to carry a set of irons that runs the 6 through the pitching wedge. So that counts for 5 more clubs. So right now we're at a total of 8, leaving us, 6 open slots. And those are going to be the key ones that we're going to get to in a moment. But here again, you gotta give it a little bit of thought. A lot of times when you buy a club, like a set off the rack or whatever it may be, it may come up to the 3 iron, it may come to the 4 iron. Just because the set comes that way does not necessarily mean that's what you need to play. So don't be afraid when you're purchasing it. You're spending a lot on clubs. Ask what options it comes in. I know when I bought my set of pings 2 seasons ago, they gave you right off the bat. They said, okay, what mix do you want? Do you want to go up to the 3? Do you want to go, up to the 4? Whatever it may be. I went up to the 3 because just me personally, I hit the 3 iron well. So you gotta know your game. You gotta know what you hit well. You gotta know what you, like Mike said, have confidence in. So let's talk about those 6 open spots. What you're gonna want there is you're gonna want to add in 3 long clubs, what we consider 3 long clubs and 2 wedges. And then there's going to be one more slot, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So if you were going to go with the less than 3 long clubs or or fewer than or two or more wedges, that would really leave your set too lopsided. Okay, because we're trying to cover the long end and the short end, and you're going to be very vulnerable to a variety of shots on the course that you're just not going to have an answer for. So let's just talk about the long clubs. The traditional way to fill these three open slots for long clubs would be to add a 5 iron along with a 5 wood. And there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's a very traditional approach, and you can feel free to go down that path if it works for you. However, recently the advent of the hybrid club has really created another option. Now, Mike, many episodes ago, we talked about the difference in the hybrid versus the long irons, the benefits of each, the downfalls of each. I know even we're seeing more and more on tour, guys are switching to the hybrids. The hybrid technology has really come a long way. And we'll link to the article on Golficity in the show notes of the hybrids versus the long irons. But I know one big benefit with the hybrid is that it gets the ball up in the air a lot easier. Me personally, it's just, I haven't had comfort in it. I've got a lot more comfort in my irons, but you're the other way. What is it about the hybrid that you like?
It's just comfort. Exactly what you just said. I mean, I have a 4 hybrid instead of a 4 iron. So I had the 4 iron and I pulled it out of the bag and I was just hitting it. I was hitting the ground. I was chunking a lot of shots with the iron as opposed to getting the ball off the ground and hitting it cleaner with the hybrid. I don't know exactly why. I think my hybrid club is actually, the shaft is a little shorter. Mm-hmm. So I'm not actually hitting the ground. I'm making more solid contact. I could probably shorten my 4 iron and kind of make it the same way. But, I just decided to take it out and just use what was working.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. And I think the biggest part is testing it. A lot of places now will let you demo clubs. So if you're unsure, my suggestion would be to take the iron out there and the hybrid counterpart, play them both in a couple different situations, see what you feel better with, see what you're hitting better, and you can put that in your bag. Honestly, it's going to kind of just pop up for you. If you use them enough, you're going to kind of get a feel like we do. It's a very personal preference thing, and you'll be able to do it. Now, if you really, really fall in love with the hybrids, you can add in an additional one too. A lot of people I see take the 5 wood out and put something like an 18-degree hybrid in. Okay, so that's something you can do. I mean, you can really mix them in, but I've seen the hybrids go down as far as the 5 iron. But that's where you want to do that mix. Maybe you say, I love them, I'm liking them, but I don't love them that much. I'm going to do a 3 hybrid, a 4 hybrid, and a 5 iron, or just the 3 hybrid and the 4 iron, 5 iron, whatever it may be. You don't have to go irons all the way up. I mean, and you see the mix. Like I said, it just proof that there's no right thing for everyone is how many different people use different things on tour. Some guys are using 2 irons, so it really is a mix there.
And it's funny because I played golf with 3 or 4 people over the past half year or so, and they had a full set of hybrid irons. So now they're going all the way up to the 9 iron with a hybrid. Mm-hmm. Some of these sets, because people are becoming more and more comfortable with hybrids, and they said, you know what, I'm going to make my whole set hybrids because I'm most comfortable with that. So.
Right. Well, it reminds me of that commercial. Like I said, the whole set is drivers.
The whole set is drivers.
But it's an interesting thing. And really, if you're somebody with a slower swing speed, a lot of times a hybrid will be more the choice as well. I see that a lot on a lot of pros, if they're fitting you, will put you into them if you have a little bit of a slower swing speed. So, but I don't want to pigeonhole that either. There's some guys with some fast swing speed who just like the overall feel. And like I said, there's a lot of different things. Like the bottom design is a lot different than what you would feel with a iron. It's a lot more like a feel like a wood. So if you hit your woods well, that's like right there can be an indicator that hybrids are going to be a way to go and what you're going to want to put in the bag. So that's where you're going to want to put your mix of the long clubs. Any way you look at it, you've got 3 slots to work with there for the long clubs, and whether that be 3, 4, 5 hybrid, or like I said, a 3 hybrid and a 4 and a 5 iron, whatever it may be, see what you're comfortable with and get out there and use it. So now the next thing, let's jump over to the other side, which would be the wedges. And this is, I think personally, where I've done more thinking and more adjustment than I do with my long clubs, because at the end of the day, we always talk about the short game really being where the game is played. And from 100 yards in, you're going to hit a lot more often than you're going to hit the long clubs. I mean, like, whereas I may pull the 3, 4 iron out of my bag 3, 4 times in a round, I'm working with my wedges on, it feels like almost every hole. So this is going to be something that's going to be very important. And this is something you may reevaluate on a regular basis. Maybe each season, give something a different try. It's going to also change as your swing changes, as you make better contact, as you're hitting the ball further. You may want to adjust your loft. And there's honestly, we could do 3, 4, 5 shows on wedges because there's so much that goes into it. We've got tons of articles on Golficity about not only loft but bounce. There's a lot that goes into those types of things. And Mike, I know you and I have tested a lot of wedges for this reason because there's just so much out there. But the real key to choosing your 2 wedges is to make sure there's no large gaps in the yardages that you can't cover. All right. So first, what you want to do, and a good way to work at this, kind of working backwards, figure out how far you can hit your pitching wedge with a comfortable full swing. So let's say, for example, that number is 110 yards. From there, you want to make sure you fill in your wedges on the way down from that, okay? So you want to make sure your next wedge in line will fly around 95 yards, okay? And then so on and so forth down the line with the 2 wedges to fill in the gaps. A big, very common one we see out there is a 52-degree wedge. I've also seen a lot of people who work with a 54. It can also work in a lot of situations, do that double duty as a sand wedge. That high loft can really help you on those green side bunkers. But finally, for your highest lofted club, you're going to want to be able to cover around 75 yards in the air. And when I say 75 yards, that's for this example we're doing here of hitting a pitching wedge 110. If you hit different, you're going to want to use the same methodology, but it's different yardage. So that might be a 58, that might be a 60 for you. Take them out, swing them on the range, see which ones carry what distances. So let's say in this example, we've got our pitching wedge now that we can go to 110. We've got our 52-degree wedge that flies 95, and we've got our 58 that flies 75. We've got almost every distance filled in because from 75, let's say up to 95, we can do a 3/4 swing with that 95 club. And from that 95 up to 110, we can do a 3/4 swing with our pitching wedge, fill that type of spots in. It's not a big swing here. We're only talking about 15 yards. And then 75 and under, we can start to work different 1/2 and 3/4 swings with that 58 or 60-degree wedge. Personally, we could talk about what you use too, Mike. For me, I go pitching wedge. Then my pitching wedge, I consider my 125 club. Then I have a 52-degree wedge, which a full swing is anywhere between 100 and 105 yards for me. And then I've got my 60, which a full swing, honestly, with a 60, it's like just hitting a pop fly to center. And if I full swing, I'm maybe 75 yards with that, 80 if I stretch it. So that's where I'm at. And I feel like I've got my gaps filled in because I've also, the double duty is I'm very, very comfortable with that 52-degree wedge, using that for chipping. Some people like to chip with less lofted clubs. I'm very comfortable with that. So that's what I chip with. How about you?
I have currently the pitching wedge 140, gap wedge 52-degree about 125 to 130, and the 56-degree about 110, 115, and then I can get the 60-degree full swing about 95 to 100. But my problem is, and if you dig deeper into that, I start to, when I pull the 60-degree out, I tend to maybe swing a little harder than I normally would. Mm-hmm. Because I know in my mind I'm using a more lofted club. So that another problem lies there. So sometimes I'll end up with a 92-yard shot to the green. I'll pull that out and I'll hit it harder, and I'll hit a 60-degree wedge 108 over the back of the green. Right. So that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
Of course. And the other thing too that really comes into play there, the higher the loft, the more that bounce is going to take effect. And you and I have both had this where on let's say a fairway is really soft and wet. That frustrating where you take a 60-degree and it just cuts right through the ground and under the ball. Nothing more frustrating than that, because your bounce is more designed for a firmer course. So something always to take into effect. But the other thing too is, don't forget, a way you can kind of fill in some of those gaps is with any of these wedges, just by opening that club face a little bit. What that does is it effectively creates more loft, and that's where you can take a full swing and cover a shorter distance. So there's a lot you can
Hmm.
do, but the wedge game is so important. I spend a lot of time on this on the range because it's one of those areas where you can really improve. But what I like was what you brought up there, Mike, is you're starting to get into actually how you have the extra wedge in there, because we talked about what pitching wedge 52, 60. What was the other one?
52, 56, 60.
52,
I've got
56,
three
60.
wedges.
Yeah, so there you go. So that brings me right
Mm,
into this final thing here, which is if you're following along the simple math here, we only have 13 clubs in the bag. There's that
mm,
final club, and what a lot of guys will do is they'll vary it, whether it be the additional wedge or an additional long club. But the good thing here is that you do have this leeway, and one thing you can do if you really want to start honing in and playing smart about your game is learn to hit both. Maybe, pick up the extra club, so you have 15 clubs. So maybe you have both an additional wedge and additional long iron or hybrid or whatever it may be. Get used to hitting them both on the range. And then based
mm.
on the course that you're playing or the conditions you're playing, decide which one goes in the bag before you go out there. That's where you're really starting to get smart about it, because let's say it's a much shorter course where you're going to be doing a lot of work off around the greens. By all means, have your 14th club be that extra wedge. Vice versa, if you're playing like you were Bethpage Black or something like that, where all day is going to be just crushing it as much as you can, then you might want to work in that extra long club. You'll be out there with the driver, 3-wood, 5-wood, and then get into your hybrids or get into to your 3-iron, whatever it may be. I mean, I've even seen guys carry a 7-wood. I used to play a 7-wood years and years ago when I was younger, and I'd use that to get a little bit more distance than some of the irons. So there's many things, but this is where you can really get smart about it. Just like I said, remember, if you do keep that extra club in your bag for practice, take it out before you hit the tee, because leave it in the trunk or whatever it may be, because you don't want that penalty.
Mm.
But really, building your set properly is a really an important part to playing your best golf. You want to make sure there's enough out there to worry about with your swing and everything else. You don't want to worry about not having the right equipment with you. Give it a little bit of thought. This is a way that you can really help improve your game, believe it or not. Mike, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Do you have any clubs in your bag, or that one club? I think we might all have this. I don't know, but that one club in our bag that we just never ever use. I'm not talking about the driver. I mean, for me, it's the 5-iron. If you pull my 5-iron out, it's
Yeah.
the cleanest club ever. There's maybe 2 or 3 ball marks on it, and it's simply because I happen to hit the 4 hybrid much more consistent and about the same distance, which is really strange.
That is.
But I don't know. Do you have any clubs like that?
That is strange, because the hybrid you would expect to go much longer, and plus it's the 4. I don't really. The only thing, the closest thing I have to that would be the 3-wood, which again, like I
Okay.
said, is pretty much. I would only say I play that maybe once, twice around, once more than
Wow.
anything else. Because honestly, in the course that I'm playing most of the time, the home course, a lot of the par fives are more tricky dog leg here, like back and forth, than they are just straight long.
Right.
So the only spot really where that 3-wood is ever going to be my main club is going to be a second shot. I mean, unless you have a
Right.
tremendously long par 3 or something crazy, it's only going to be a second shot. But otherwise, I've put a lot of work into dialing in my distances for each of those other clubs. So I know, and it takes a lot of the thought process out. I know with each iron is about a 10-yard difference. So like working my way back, let's say I hit my 3-iron. I know I hit my 3-iron about 205, 210. 4-iron is right around 200. It just goes right back in those things. 5-iron is about that 190. Then just keep going down,
Right.
180, 170, 160, all the way down to the pitching wedge. So I just, wherever I end up is what I'm hitting. So it really, that I feel like I've got dialed in. It's just that extra wedge versus that extra long club that I bounce back and forth with.
It's funny. You before you talked about me taking the driver out to make some room for more clubs, and I'm thinking back. This is kind of a did you know moment, and I'm sure you knew this, but maybe a lot of our listeners don't. So Mickelson was the only pro to ever win a major without using his driver the whole week.
Really?
Did you know that?
No,
I
I
think it
didn't.
was the 2013 PG Championship, or maybe it was the Open. I don't know. Anyone out there can email me and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember there was one not too long ago that he won without having a driver in the bag all week.
That's astonishing. But that shows you something. That shows you how much thought they put into it, because he doesn't play that way regularly. I mean, in fact, he hits his driver really well. So he identified in his strategy something of having another club for that particular course, for those particular conditions, that gave him an extra edge, and it worked. So there's no reason why we can't do that too. Like I said, I mean, maybe you see a great deal on Divot or something for an extra wedge for a degree that you don't quite, you don't have, or a gap you might not have. Pick it up, learn to hit it on the range, so you feel like you're comfortable with it. Throw it in the trunk of the car, and then when you're going to play a course that, like I said, that is a shorter course or something like that, where it requires much more accuracy, 100 yards in than it does distance, take one of the long clubs out. Take that, for me, like for instance, I could take that 3-wood out, say, there's only a chance I swing this maybe once this whole round, and I'll throw the extra degree wedge in there, and it covers an extra 5 or 10 yards somewhere in the bag. I mean, it's a smart way to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, so you know what time it is, right?
Yep, it's lightning round time, and you're up. You're on the clock this time around.
Back in the hot seat.
Yeah, but this week, Frank, it's going to be a little easier. I mean, I'm going to throw a few questions, maybe a handful of questions at you that'll make you think. But then I'm gonna end it with what I'm going to now create in my head, the super lightning round, which is going to be 10 very quick questions with quick answers.
Okay.
It's basically I'm going to give you a choice, this or that. What I want people out there to know a little bit more detail about you as a golfer. Every week they tune in and hear about what you and I have to say. So we're gonna learn a little bit more about Frank today. So let's start it right off. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, we'll start with the longer questions first. All right. So first, Frank, you get a phone call at the beginning of the year from the PGA Tour, and they say, quote, "Frank, we're gonna fly you out for a week, and you could spend the week behind the ropes at any tournament, X majors. And you can even play in the Wednesday Pro-Am." This is probably a no-brainer, but which event do you play in and why?
So you say not the majors.
Right, because that would be obvious.
Yeah, that would be entirely too obvious.
Yes.
That's a good question. Actually, I don't think it's as obvious as you think. I think one thing that, if you want to talk about like what would be the most fun, just for like as just
you're there the whole week.
I'd love to do the TPC Scottsdale, do the Waste Management Open. You get to play in the stadium. Come on. I mean, how do you beat that? That's like, I think everybody has the most fun. It's just, it's wild. It's crazy. I would have a good time doing that.
That's an interesting answer. I did not expect that. A lot of people would think, I get to play in the Pro-Am. Why not play in the most celebrity packed Pro-Am at the Pebble Beach?
Yeah.
But that's cool. I never even thought of that one.
Listen, personally, I'd rather play with the guys on tour than I don't even know who some of the guys they have at the Pro-Am nowadays are.
Kenny
Kevin
G,
Costner,
Chris Berman.
like,
yeah, exactly.
I think I'd much rather play with Tiger.
Exactly. But all right, great. So next question. Your closest buddy calls you up, wants you to plan the bachelor party weekend for him. It needs to be filled with golf, among other things. You have 7 guys on the trip, and you could fill the 8th with any PGA Tour player. Now, remember, this person's not only playing golf all weekend with you, but they're spending the night. They're going out. They're hanging out with you. Who is it?
Is Ricky bringing his girlfriend?
I knew it was going to be Ricky, but...
well, you listen. You know what? That's funny. Where you thought you were going with that question is, where would the destination be?
I thought that would be too easy for you, because I think you would go right back to the Caribbean.
Of course. But you know what? That's a perfect, it's a perfect thing, because actually next week on the show, we've got a special guest coming in who specializes in golf trips. And that would be a perfect question to ask him, because I know a lot of guys are lining up the golf trips for this season, and that'd be great to dive into.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to throw that one at him next week.
Yeah.
All right. Last question of this sub round here. Do you have any superstitions during or before a round of golf that you think help you play better?
I would say I used to have a lot more than I do now. Back in playing, more competitively in high school, I had tons of them. A lot of them involved like if a certain ball that I would have with me or whatever, or if a ball, and I've heard it's funny because I've heard other guys on like actually on tour talk about the same type of thing. If you play really well with a given ball, I would just like put it away, put it in the bag because I feel like it's all the luck of that ball is run out. I used to carry a certain amount of tees in my pocket. Truthfully, most of that has gone away. I feel like I spend my entire mental capacity nowadays focusing on all the stuff we talk about here and getting into my mental game more so than
Right.
leaving anything up to chance or luck.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's fly through my super lightning round here. Now,
Okay.
basically, this is the more detailed, quick answer question. So here we go. Number one, walk or ride?
I love to walk if possible. Most of my games
Okay.
have to be squeezed in between work, so I have to ride, but if possible, always walk.
Okay. So with that said, pull cart or carry the bag?
Pull cart because my back, like I said, I can't
That's right.
carry the bag, and the ideal situation would be have a caddy, but I've never had that experience.
Okay. Even on the hottest day, are you a shorts guy or a pants guy to complete the golf outfit?
I got to go pants as much as possible, but if it's the very hottest and it's going to mess with my round, I'll throw a pair of shorts on.
Okay. Does Frank usually go for it or does he lay up?
I hate to say it, but I usually go for it.
Okay.
I think I'm teaching laying it up all the time and playing smart. And I have that battle with myself where I say, and I'm
Right.
getting better at it. I'll say that much,
Mhm.
Mike. I'm getting better at it where I'm saying, play smart, play the smart play. But
Mhm.
man, does it feel good when you do go for it and you get it.
Okay. All right. Back to the wardrobe. Hat or no hat?
Hat. Yeah, I'd prefer a hat over playing with sunglasses even because I feel like you got to be able to see. And a lot of guys, see this too, use the hat to kind of zone in when you're reading a putt. It's a great way to kind of take out some of that peripheral vision.
Right. Yep. Good call. All right. Down to the feet. Golf shoes. You have laces or loafers?
Laces.
Okay.
But I've been playing a lot more with the soft spikes. You know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about? Like not the ones that screw
Right.
in, the ones that are built. And I love them 99% of the time, but on a really, really wet
Unless
day,
it rains. Yeah.
nothing beats, having the better screw in spikes. I remember the days
Okay.
when we used to play with the metal spikes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So your ball's off the green. Do you chip it or you putt it? What's your go-to?
I've been chipping like on fire the last couple years.
Okay.
I've been going to the chipping. Anytime I'd say before last season, I would say putting, but all the stuff we covered on chipping and going out and doing it, like I said, last season I had more chip-ins than I had previously in my entire life playing golf.
Mm. Okay. So there you go. That answers that.
Yeah.
300 yard par four. Driver or 3-iron off the tee?
Just straight out. I mean, there's a lot
Straight
to
out.
that.
No, there's straight out. There's no mess, no fuss.
Straight
Maybe
out, I'd probably hit the driver if I'm hitting it well. Unless there's something that right
Okay.
now I've got a ton of confidence in my driver. If there's anything to give me an indication, I wouldn't hit it. Because really in something like that, there's not necessarily a benefit. This is actually a perfect question because we just talked about this here with those ranges in. That's something I'll think about more often. If I drive it through my last, let's say I was to drive it through my last wedge that I can swing with a full swing, I would much rather hit less club because I would rather my second shot into the green not be some sort of half or 3/4 swing. So that I
Gotcha.
will give thought to. So if I want to be 125 out because that's a perfect pitching wedge for me, I'll back it off a little bit. So I do that
Okay.
reverse calculation a lot because I know
Okay.
I'm not getting there. 300, no, not getting there.
Right.
Hot
And
day,
what's- yeah.
downhill, rolling, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly. All right, last two. Ball goes in the water. You leave it or fish it out?
If I can see it, I'm
If
getting
it's
it.
if it's gettable. Okay.
If I
you're
can
getting
see it,
All
I'm
right.
getting it because I'm not losing my 3-up ball. I'm not kidding.
All right.
Those things, because I order them every whatever call, and every couple of months I try to replenish them, but
Right.
no, I got to
If you
find
if
it.
you can get if you can get it, you get. But you're not the type of guy who has that long,
I don't
device
have-
in your
no,
bag.
I don't have one
Yeah,
of those. But if
okay.
I can see it and I can get it with my 3-iron, I'm getting it.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Last question. What do you prefer? Are you a 6 a.m. tee time guy or a twilight golfer?
Ooh, that's a good question because I love both. I love
Okay.
I love getting around in early and and having that done and start my day that way. But as far as like just a relaxed twilight round, nothing really beats that, you know? It's just
Okay.
it's so far and few between that I get a chance to play that way. But
Mhm.
I like that. That's either way is great. Either way is great. I guess
All right.
anytime you're playing, it's great, right?
Anytime you play is great. Exactly. I was just going to
Yeah.
say that. All right, Frank, you passed this week's lightning round. Congratulations.
You know, I'm having fun with these. I think
Yeah.
we should do is, why don't we do this, Mike? We should have the audience start to email us some questions and we'll work them
Yeah,
into the
please.
lightning round. Yeah, send
Because
those to us at podcast@golficity.com. And you can label them too if you want it to be a question for Mike or a question to Frank. And we'll work them in there because that's fun way to kind of get you guys involved.
yeah, plus it's only a matter of time before I run out of questions to ask you.
That's true.
You
Yeah.
know?
That's true. But you've been pretty darn creative. I tell you, the hardest part of my show last week was coming up with those questions for
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
I'm thinking about it,
Exactly.
driving around. I'm like, what am I going to ask this guy? I got to figure something out. But anyway,
Excellent.
all right, that's everything we have this week. Give it a try. Like I said, if you've been playing with the same set of 14 clubs for God knows how long, maybe it's time to reevaluate it. At least give it a thought. See if there's some areas where you can get not just having 14 clubs, but having the best optimal mix of clubs. Can't say that. I guess this is too long a show today. So anyway, do that and let us know too. Let us know what you're playing. I'd love to hear about what different guys work into the bag because you'd be surprised how many different variations there are on those 14 clubs. So email us or comment on the show. You can get to us by going to golficity.com/episode 66. There you can post your comments on the show and you can see links to everything we talked about. So that's everything we have. Like I said, next week we're going to be back. We're going to have another special guest for you and a lot more coming this summer. And we'll be providing constant updates as we're kind of learning and growing with the game as our own games evolve this year. So appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate all the great reviews. Keep them coming on iTunes. We love them. We read them all and it's a really big help. So keep those coming and we'll see you again next week.